We were cocked and ready to retaliate at 3 locations. I pulled back as 150 people would have died. That's President Donald Trump issuing the strongest warning to Iran yet. What will be the global impact of escalating US-Iran tensions? We're going to discuss this today on our special broadcast. Joining us today to take this discussion forward, we have the Director of National Maritime Foundation, Vice Admiral Pradeep Chauhan, former Ambassador to Canada and South Korea, Vishnu Prakash, and former Ambassador to the United States of America, Meera Shankar. We'll also be joined by Steve Herman, White House correspondent for the Voice of America. Vice Admiral Chauhan, I'd like to come to you first. This seems to be a very strong warning by President Donald Trump. He also said that we were ready to retaliate. We were ready to attack at 3 places. I pulled back 10 minutes later because I was told 150 people would have died. Do you think that the military option is now off the table for President Donald Trump?
आवाज नहीं आ रही. Well, I didn't get the last part of your question, so perhaps we could do that again.
Sure. Vice Admiral Chauhan, the question that I'd like to ask, President Donald Trump has been tweeting over the last 30 minutes saying that we were ready to attack Iran at 3 locations last night. I pulled back in 10 minutes because I was told by my general 150 people would have died. We remain ready. As a former officer, what do you feel about this message that President Donald Trump is trying to convey?
Well, I gathered your first part of the first bit of the question you had asked, which was correct. Is the military option really off the table for the Americans? And is now Donald Trump's comment to be seen in any different light? I think that what has happened is that President Trump is probably expounding a major capability threat to Iran, and this business of suddenly being told that 156 people are going to be killed is a bit odd, because if you are going to fire missiles into a country, the purpose will hardly be to ensure that nobody is killed. So I think that what is being done is a warning is being given, and a fairly strong statement of intent is being provided to Iran vis-a-vis this particular action. Will the military actions actually occur? I think it's hard to say, but I rather doubt it, because the impact will be fairly catastrophic all across the globe.
All right. Ambassador Meera Shankar, what do you make of this? You've served in the United States. You've got the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi saying no appetite for war with Iran. Joe Biden is saying that this is absolutely self-inflicted. Do you think Donald Trump can go ahead with something like this? There is also a worry that US may just bumble into a war with Iran.
Well, I think, it's important to understand that opinion within the US is divided on how to deal with Iran. The Democrats still hold that the nuclear deal that they had concluded with Iran was a good one, and that it should have been maintained. Whereas the Republicans, many of them were skeptical of the deal, and President Trump had said he would withdraw. And he did, and then imposed fresh sanctions on Iran. Since then, the tensions on both sides have been escalating, with US military deployments in the Gulf, some incidents which have happened, including the latest one where Iran is said to have shot down a US drone. They claim it was over their territory. The US claims it was outside Iranian waters. So the thing is that having gone on the ladder of escalating threats to Iran and also trying to isolate Iran, President Trump now faces the dilemma that many in his team are ready to for more muscular action, but he doesn't want another long military entanglement, having made that a core element of his platform during his presidential campaign, saying, what is America doing, wasting its resources in military entanglements overseas? I'm going to bring everybody back, and I'm going to concentrate on America first, building the economy. So, whereas members of Trump's team are, probably more ready to engage in some military adventurism, President Trump himself has more than once signaled that he would like to hold them back.
Ambassador Meera Shankar,
and as I said, there's no consensus in the U.S. on this and between the U.S. and its allies on this.
All right, no consensus in the United States. Ambassador Meera Shankar, I'll take that point about Donald Trump being in a dilemma to Steve Herman of Voice of America, who covers the White House very, very closely. Steve Herman, what do you make of all these tensions between US and Iran right now? This latest tweet by Donald Trump, put this into perspective for us.
Well, the tweets are absolutely remarkable that we have in real time the President of the United States putting his cards on the table. This is really unprecedented, but it also demonstrates to Tehran that he's taking a moderate stance here, that if it wasn't for me, Donald Trump, you would have been bombed last night and people would have died. And I was the one who pulled it back at the last minute. I was in the Oval Office yesterday with the President, the Secretary of State, and John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, when we had Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in there. And the President was asked, is there going to be war with Iran? And he said, you'll see. So he is definitely flexing muscle, but also showing that unless he gets some accommodations from Tehran, that there will be consequences. And also this is a signal that if any Americans are to be harmed, there would definitely be a quick kinetic response from the United States military.
All right. And Steve, also explain to us what is the extent of military preparation that has been done by the United States, and a question that Meera Shankar had raised, Ambassador Meera Shankar, who served in the United States, that is, after raising the rhetoric to such a high level, can President Donald Trump actually withdraw?
Yes, absolutely. He can. He's the ultimate arbiter as the commander-in-chief about any sort of military action. There were definitely meetings yesterday in the Situation Room at the Pentagon. We had members of Congress, top members of Congress, called into the Situation Room to lay out what had happened with the drone. But we have to keep in mind that the Pentagon is planning for all sorts of contingencies at all the time. They can pull plans off the shelf. So it's not like they needed to scramble within a couple of hours to basically build an attack from scratch. Trump likes to say all options are on the table. Well, that's true. All options are on the table all the time. And it's just a matter of getting generals, the National Security Advisor, the CIA, and the President in the Situation Room and deciding which one of those options to execute.
All right, Steve, I'll request you to stay with us. I'd also like to get in a word from Ambassador Vishnu Prakash. Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, worrying times we're living in right now. Where do you think this is going? How is Tehran thinking?
Parikshit, it is anybody's guess. There are two facets or two examples I can cite about President Trump's action. If you recall Syria, he has twice authorized strikes on Syria, and numerous people would have died. So, I mean, I don't think that deaths, especially in third world countries, is too much of a bother. So that's one aspect of that. And second is North Korea. After talking of a major conflict, etc., etc., President Trump, decided to have negotiations with North Korea, and which had not happened for over 60 years. So you have now, what is difference between Iran, North Korea, and Syria is the question. And my feeling is that Iran is neither North Korea nor Syria. It is not going to roll back and just let people roll over them. We recall it had fought an 8-year war with Iraq. It is capable of standing on its own. It is capable of, it's a civilizational society. They know how to handle pain and suffering. And when it comes to the US, people rally under the flag, around the flag in Iran. They are very unhappy with the regime, but no, when it comes to the great, quote-unquote, great Satan, it's a different outlook. Now, as I see it, the problem is that Tel Aviv and Riyadh are egging on President Trump. That is one. Then there is the Shia-Sunni dimension. And then there is a great game pertaining to energy and oil. So it's a very combustible mix. And that is where President Trump comes in with his domestic constituency and yet conscious that he cannot allow boots on the ground.
That's right.
So, well, as one of the co-panelists said, nothing is off the table. And, but, you know, he is quite capable of sending a signal through back channels that he wants to de-escalate and, you know, things can be sorted out. So, let's be prepared for anything dramatic. It could be hopefully not an escalation. I will not rule it out, but I am also not ruling out this de-escalation. Parikshit?
How should India be prepared? Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, how should India be prepared?
India has made it very clear that we are in the same geography as Iran. Our interests are different. We have always maintained our very clear position that we do not want a nuclear Iran. We are opposed to that, and yet we recognize the right of Iran to pursue an atom for peace. And we are very clear again, like the Europeans are, that JCPOA the agreement was followed, observed in letter and spirit by Iran. So obviously it is quite obvious that there is a certain segment in the American decision making, the hardliners so to say, who are have a very let's say muscular or an aggressive posture towards Iran. But here I am afraid US will realize that, or should realize that they may not have the support of the world, because neither the Europeans nor the Asians nor the Chinese nor the Russians are going to support the US if they're engaged in any adventurism with Iran.
All right. Admiral Chauhan, just to get you in, what do you feel will be the global impact of this? I think Ambassador Vishnu Prakash pointed out that the global powers, the superpowers, will not be on board with something like this that the US president is planning. But over the next few weeks, what will be the impact on markets? What will be the impact on energy security? There is G20 coming up. There are talks between Pompeo and S. Shankar as well.
Well, let me first of all make a comment of my own, and that is with regard to war. You know, very frequently you hear this kind of comment, particularly from specific countries, which say that, you know, don't worry, the boys will be home before Christmas. And I don't know whether you've noticed, but they never tell you Christmas or which year. There are, in fact, no short wars. Even where asymmetries are very large, wars tend to be protracted, particularly when countries are, as the ambassador said, are unwilling to simply roll over and allow other people to roll over them. And I think that Iran, I agree with him that Iran is a civilizational entity which has got the ability to bear and stand quite a lot of pain, and it has demonstrated this in fairly contemporary times. What will be the impact should conflict actually break out along the armed route or the military route? I think that the impact will be quite significant. First of all, the USA itself has no real requirements for energy imports from the Persian Gulf area, largely because of shale oil, and this was probably going to last for a few years, although not forever. And so the impact directly on the USA in terms of energy is probably going to be minimal. However, for the rest of the world, particularly particularly India, China, Japan, South Korea, and on the other side, much of Europe, the effect is going to be catastrophic. Because as, you know, one more thing that I would like to say, which is outside of the energy, but very much in the economic area, is that after all, India's largest export partner on the planet Earth is the UAE. And therefore, second largest anyway, if not the largest export partner, then the second largest export partner on the planet is the UAE. And therefore, it is not just oil traffic that determines the sensitivity to us of the Strait of Hormuz, but places such as Jebel Ali are in fact critical areas, and they're all on the western part of that particular segment. So we will certainly be significantly affected, even outside of the military actions that might occur. We were already importing something like, I think, 24 million metric tons of crude oil from Iraq, so it's going to be heavy.